Hey, what's up, guys? Ray here with Amy inside of Cris Cyborg's headquarters, and we are going to be bringing you a periodical discussion of sorts just to provide some new content, some fresh content to the viewers on the YouTube page. We've listened to your requests, and so this is what we're going to be bringing for you guys. Amy, go ahead and introduce yourself, let everybody know a little bit about yourself and where to find you, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Amy Kaplan, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a journalist, photographer, but I'm also one of Chris's PinkBelt girls. So I met Cris originally through her PinkBelt fitness camp, and that's kind of how we all...
Journalist, photographer, specializing in...
MMA.
And combat sports, hopefully.
Yes.
We're going to push her into the WWE
Yes.
for those of you fans, and we're going to start introducing her to a little bit more boxing as well. Hopefully this will be a repeat show that will be coming back to some more information with you guys. As you guys know, me, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, 4-time MMA champion, Cris Cyborg's fiance, Ray Elbe. So let's get started with things, shall we?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yay!
News of the weekend was Greg Hardy came in with his co-main event slot in Florida.
Yes.
And was impressive. There was a little bit of backlash about the quality of the opponent, and so I was thinking, you know, I'm not really understanding what all this is about, why everybody's so upset. You know, he's just had his first couple of fights. Of course, they're going to give him this main event slot, co-main event slot. He's a tremendous athlete with a huge following. And he's in a division that needs an outstanding star in Florida during NFL draft weekend. Why not give him this co-main event slot? He performed.
I mean, where do I start? There's lots of reasons. I believe that he shouldn't even be fighting in the UFC to begin with. I think that...
Whoa. Why should he not be allowed to fight in the UFC?
Well, I think that that his criminal past and the allegations that are against him and the things that have been spoken and proven in some cases about him, domestic violence being the big one.
When did these happen?
Years ago.
Is there ability for you to be reformed?
Absolutely. My apprehension is that he's using skills, he's learning skills that would thus make him a more dangerous person. And so I think that he has every right to have a job, he has every right to rehabilitate his life. I think that MMA is not the right way to do it. Making money professionally off of a skill and a thing you've already demonstrated against women is not a good idea. Maybe he could be, if he's really interested in MMA and wants to learn it, maybe he could teach MMA instead of performing on the stage.
Instead of making millions of dollars, maybe he could make thousands of dollars.
Right. And prove his worth first. Prove that he really is changed. Because I think that he hasn't proven that yet.
And what would it take for him to be able to prove that in your eyes?
A long time.
So time would be the duration of it.
Time and if he's really rehabilitated, he would understand why women are not okay with watching him fight in the cage, making money off of, like, basically, I mean, he's a name because of what he did. You know, a lot of people know him as that. A lot of people don't know him as a football player. They know him as a football player who beat up women.
Who was acquitted, right? Or never charged, right?
Yes.
Theoretically.
Correct, but as a victim of domestic violence, I understand how a woman wouldn't want to continue to go through the court process. It's really almost harder than the actual crime itself because you have to relive it in front of the person that committed the crime. It's just something that you don't want to do. You want to move past it as fast as you can.
But we have other sports, combat sports specifically, with other athletes who consistently are the highest selling pay-per-view of all time in boxing that have similar accusations. And is it kind of somebody's ability to decide for the consumer where they can spend that dollar?
Well, I think that
Like, if there's somebody that's willing to watch Beavis and Butthead, should a mom tell somebody that nobody should be allowed to watch Beavis and Butthead because I don't agree with that TV show?
It's not so much about the viewers. It's not me saying you aren't allowed to watch him. I don't think he should be a representative of the UFC. It's sort of the other way around. If you want to watch him,
you don't want to have him affiliated with the Premier League of Fighting.
Correct.
I think that's something that it does kind of surprise me that there hasn't been any public backlash, at least in sake towards like the sponsors of the UFC. You'll see a lot of people when somebody's a celebrity and they endorse something, and the celebrity does something that is kind of controversial, then people will go towards the sponsor and say, hey, I want her pulled off of that TV channel.
Right.
She said such and such with a really bad word during the Fox News broadcast, and I want her removed from that TV show. And it is interesting, though, to see that the duplicity of the athlete, right? Because athletes will habitually step over that line that maybe an actor or a singer or a daytime TV star won't be able to do the same with the same leeway.
Right, I think that I've seen people removed from their positions for much less, for like a comment on Twitter.
I mean, even in the UFC, right? So there is a double standard in that. I'm friends with Will Chope. Do you know who that is? So Will Chope's claim to fame, he probably has about 100 fights now at this point.
Okay.
But he had one fight in the UFC, and it was a third round loss to Max Holloway. And he was supposed to have a second fight in the UFC, and during fight week, somebody, through doing some digging, had found that he had been dismissed from his military service because of domestic violence allegations. And he was dismissed from the code of conduct from the UFC. His ex-wife, who the incident actually occurred with, had came forward and really tried to speak on his behalf, saying that he had been rehabilitated through martial arts, and actually that his ability to fight in the UFC was giving him an ability to pay child support and help with his kids, and that he had already completed his punishment, he had already completed his anger management, he had already completed some psychological training, and needless to say, he was never brought back to the UFC after that came to light.
And see, I would support him coming back because the victim is speaking on his behalf.
So it's a unique dynamic, and it is one of those things that I think when fans actively engage with sponsors, you're going to get a lot more of a reaction from the company.
Right.
I think.
So let's talk about Rory MacDonald. He won his fight this weekend.
Did he win?
Well, technically, majority draw. Right?
Explain. I don't understand how this happened. One ref said John Fitch won.
Right.
Two refs said it was a tie.
Right. No.
And now Rory MacDonald is going on to the next round.
I need to do some research on that.
That's how it went
I didn't
down.
watch the movie.
So majority draw means that the majority of the refs saw it as a draw.
Right.
One of the refs did pick a winner, picked John Fitch as the winner, but because there was no winner, the champion advanced to the next round.
Right, okay, that's
My
right.
question would be is what happens if this same scenario happens in one of the other fights in the tournament and there is no champion to advance to the next round? That's my question.
I mean, they would have to have another fight. Yeah, exactly.
Best
Just do
two
one
out of
more
three.
round. One more round.
Yeah. Afterwards, right?
They would have to do another. They'd just have to postpone, or they.
So 5 rounds, and then we're gonna make it 6 rounds.
No, I mean they would just do another fight.
Meet you next week for a 1
Like
round to the
backstage.
death fight
Backstage.
at the hospital.
Oh my God.
No, but I'm curious as to how that kind of would play out into the tournament. You got Invicta FC, they're doing that one-night tournament coming up. That's a little bit different of a dynamic.
Don't they have alternates in that case too?
They do. It's cool seeing these tournaments come back. I really like how Bellator's been able to do this. They did it with the heavyweights. This is the welterweight. Rory MacDonald, though already being a champion, how do you feel about him having the belt in each round as he goes through?
I feel like if he's going to be in the tournament, he has to, I don't want to say give up the belt, but not be represented as a champion in those situations.
Right. Tournament champion versus belt champion at the end of this?
Right. Or at the end of it, he keeps his belt or he loses his belt. Because if he's still in it at the end, I mean, at some point, if he loses the tournament, then I think he loses the belt.
So after the fight, though, you know, I think the most attention wasn't necessarily on this majority draw thing, as it was on the idea that he did keep the belt, but his post-fight victory speech
Was really weird.
Tell me about it.
So he said that, you know, he's found God and he's more religious now, and he's finding it's harder to hurt someone in a fight because of that reason.
Which I'm going to be completely 100 with you. I always find it a little bit odd when somebody completely pummels another person and then says, I want to thank God for this ability.
I do too.
I get being able to use the platform. I get that it's a sport. I get that it brings and attracts a lot of masses in attention. It gives you an opportunity to glorify an ability. But it is a little refreshing to see an athlete like Rory MacDonald say, man, I just don't feel it in my heart to punish somebody anymore, right?
I just feel like if you're going to announce that you don't want to be fighting, it sounds like he doesn't want to be fighting, then maybe stop fighting.
Yeah, okay, Dana White. But, you know, the reality is, in my mind, is this, is he's got a chance to make another $1 million.
Right.
You know, when you work a 9 to 5, I could be in a situation where I am tired of going and driving that driving truck every single morning to pick everybody up. But my wife says, man, you've done 18 years, you got to do another 2 years because we need you to reach full retirement. You know, he's got an opportunity here. If he doesn't feel like hurting people, Ben Askren said it best. Take him down and submit him, right? Rory MacDonald's a great grappler. The next round, he's got Neiman Gracie, another great grappler. If he doesn't want to beat him up on the feet, I think the Gracies had shown us that you could go in there and use Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to win a fight without hurting an opponent.
Right. I mean, yeah, you don't have to hurt your opponent in every fight, but you also don't have to announce that you don't like hurting your opponent. I feel like that's a given. I feel like nobody goes in there and says, I love hurting my opponent. I mean, maybe there might be a few, actually. Could be probably would.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like he's got some.
And there's definitely fighters that go in there that have said that they don't particularly like to hurt their opponent. They're in there for the athletic and competition of it. Right? I don't know. My own personal opinion on it, it's a lot of money. You've already had a lot of fights. Another $1 million could probably do quite a bit to pay for yourself, your family, your college of your kids, and really be a nice retirement. You're 2 fights, 6 months away.
So then just with how you feel. We don't care anyways.
So I saw the big news all over social media from your camera captured Tito Ortiz is back. The People's Champ is making his return.
He's making his return again.
So tell me, how did you get this? Him signing it on the back of his lawyer's back?
Yeah, so I was sitting in Media Row and I kind of looked over and I saw like a commotion. And I saw a lot of important people, and I went, what's going on? And I saw some paperwork, and I'm like, okay, something's happening. So I got up, ran over there real fast, just started recording and looking at what's going on, and I saw Tito, and I saw Campbell, and I realized, what was happening, and it was just kind of perfect timing.
Any news about who's going to fight, where the event might take place, when they're expecting Tito to return? Did they make any of those announcements?
They didn't make any announcements. I spoke to Campbell afterwards. He told me October is the month they're shooting for, and they're aiming at either Mexico or United States. I think it's got to be Mexico, just because of the people that are probably fighting. I'm thinking it's going to be Alberto.
It sounded in the video like Tito was saying Alberto Del Rio.
That's who I think it is. I feel
Alberto Del Rio.
Exactly. But it can't be anybody else. I mean, there's nobody else it could be.
And this guy is the wrestler that fought Crow Cop.
I believe so, yeah.
In the mask?
Yeah, he's the
masked guy that fought Crow Cop in Pride?
Yes, he's a very big deal. People know who he is.
His family's a luchador family.
Right, yeah. He's a really great guy, super nice, works, really well connected in Combate. So it's like, who do you root for in this fight?
Tito! People's champ.
Yes, of course. Officially, it's going to be Tito.
And how do you think that changes the dynamics? Do you think this makes Combate a real player in the sport of MMA?
I think so. I think it's a really good move for Combate. It's a perfect fit for them. It gets new eyes on them that maybe didn't really take them legitimately before. I think they've always been legitimate. I think they do a really good job at marketing to the Hispanic culture, and I think that's why a lot of the fans don't think they're legitimate, because they are not seeing what they're doing, because they're not in that culture. They're not in that, they're not watching, Telemundo and like Univision and all that, and they're really catering to that viewership.
Nice, which California is such a great market, right?
Right.
Don't forget to go to subscribe, Extract Labs, and like, smash the button for me, because if you do that, they're gonna give you $1 for the fight for the forgotten.
Boom!
Moving along.
Greatest woman of all time, Clarissa Shields, remained undefeated, put the nail to the hammer, and unified all the belts.
It's impressive.
Now it is setting up the super fight between Clarissa Shields and Cecilia Brockers. Fans of Cyborg, you guys are familiar with Clarissa. Having sparred. If you haven't seen that, check out the video on the YouTube channel. Cecilia Brockers and Cris have gone back and forth about a potential summertime fight this year as well. What do you think about this? Two unified champions, Clarissa versus Cecilia Brockers. What do you think about this?
I think Cecilia has the edge here, and I know I might be the underdog here, but she has more experience, definitely more experience than her. She's got the weight cut on her side, or the lack of a weight cut on her side.
That's one of the things, right? If this super fight's going to happen, Cecilia Brockers is going to come up from 147 pounds, which coincidentally, Cris fighting at 145, Cris could slide in there and fight at the same weight class if Cecilia decides not to go up in weight. Clarissa would have to come down, and they could meet at 154 pounds to make this super fight. Do you think it's possible for two women in boxing to make $1 million in the same night for a fight?
Yeah, I hope so.
That's the question, right? I mean, right here,
deserve it.
This fight would be the only two women in the history of boxing to ever win every single major belt in their weight division. And then obviously Clarissa Shields, a two-time Olympic gold medalist. Layla Ali, Lucia Riker, those girls, they didn't have the opportunity to box in the Olympics. It would be a big fight.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with the idea that Cecilia is going to be able to outpoint Clarissa. I think Clarissa is going to put them hands on her.
But she doesn't have knockout power.
I think she does have knockout power. I think that the idea that women fight 2-minute rounds is why she's not getting those knockouts. I think if you give her another 60 seconds, she put Hammer out in 3 different rounds. And to be honest with you, I think the difference between the 2-minute round and the 3-minute round is one of the things that's held back women's boxing.
So do you think this fight will be a 3-minute round?
Currently in women's boxing, none of the major belts will sanction a 3-minute round bout.
That's ridiculous.
The idea is that women do not handle dehydration as well as men, that their body is not meant to be dehydrated as much as men, and that as a recipe, dehydration plus duration can equal further damage. And so the idea is that by doing a 2-minute round, the women are exposed to less damage to their brains.
So, well, I mean, obviously MMA and boxing is not the same thing, but we see it in MMA, and
so I am in agreement with you on this. But I have actually, there has been a heated debate about this. The WBC actually presented evidence
did you guys see that eye roll that he just did right there?
that said that essentially the molecular makeup of a woman with dehydration effects make it sit to where she cannot take a punch as well as a man. My reply to this was, one, being punched is not safe.
Right.
It's not safe for a man.
Right.
And it is not safe for a woman. Also of note, with a little bit of Google research, I was able to find out that the length of a woman's head is oftentimes longer than a man.
Oh.
And the thickness of the woman's skull is often thicker than a man. So anybody that understands how knockouts occur know that what it is it's actually the rattling of your brain against your skull, and then that causes a hematoma, which causes you to lose consciousness. So a thicker skull or a thinner skull doesn't really matter when you're talking about a knockout, because we're not talking about penetrating through the skull.
Right.
Right? The idea would be that a woman, in my opinion, and a man, as long as they're competing, the thickness of the skull doesn't necessarily matter about the rattling of the brain.
Right.
So, I don't agree. And I do think that 3-minute rounds are needed. I think that a 2-minute round probably is not any safer than a 3-minute round.
No.
Because if it's a 2-minute round, my assumption is that there are more punches thrown because it's 120 seconds of this.
Right.
Where if it's a 3-minute round, I allow the fight to develop.
And if it were the case that women are more susceptible to being knocked out, then we would see them being knocked out in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's not like if they're easier to knock out, they're going to be knocked out in a minute.
So I think that I would like to see Clarissa Shields is standing up. She's talking about 3-minute rounds for women. Cris Cyborg has talked, if she comes over to boxing, she feels like she wants to fight 3 minutes. I would like to see these other sanctioning bodies maybe go back and reevaluate some of the science that they feel theory has been proven on. And yeah, I think that that's a big fight. I'm going to take Shields, and if it's 3-minute rounds, I think Shields' finishes are inside of 8.
All right. Agree to disagree. I think it'll go to decision, though. I don't think either one will be knocked out.
We'll have to see. So this weekend, Cyborg and I were in Dallas, Fort Worth for an appearance at the Le Grand Place Mall.
Fancy.
Shout out Cyborg Nation in Texas. There was, I don't know, man, 400, 500 people in the mall. It was packed. They had a mariachi band out there. It was going hard. It was a good time. Afterwards, though, we decided we wanted to watch Jacare's fight. And so we headed out to look for a bar where we could watch it. Went to Hooters. We caught the Andrei Arlovsky loss to the Curitichibano, the Curitici guy from Chris's hometown of Curitiba.
Yeah.
Should have wrote your name down. I can't remember. Icky?
Yeah. It was
that.
Yeah. It was a.
Isiki? I don't know.
We'll write it at the bottom here.
Yeah. Which also was a controversial fight, right?
Right.
Anyways, back on topic. After the Arlovsky fight, I asked the owner of the Hooters, are you going to be putting on the ESPN Plus portion of the card? And long story short, nothing. Text a friend of mine who happened to be at Buffalo Wild Wings, which coincidentally was on the canvas, and same thing, they weren't showing it. So my question is to you, man, what do you think of these streaming sites? Because for me, DAZN, Fight Pass, ESPN Plus, I just want to go to the bar and have a beer.
Yeah.
And be able to watch the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bar owners are not on top of the trends right now. They're not. They could so easily show that fight by getting a $30 Amazon Fire Stick, sticking it in their TV and showing it. And they would also have access to playing old fights if they wanted to have like a flashback night. I mean, they would be so ahead of the times by doing that. Not even ahead of the times, they'd be so with the times.
In the times?
In the times. Because everybody
I still got
is
cable.
streaming. Yeah,
I still
don't
have cable
anymore. So everything is, I watch everything on Netflix. I watch it on, I watch my Netflix on my Fire Stick. I pretty much watch everything on my Fire Stick. So I don't understand why these bar owners are not switching over.
Well, and you got to think about the fans too, right? There was a time not that long ago when MMA was illegal in half of the United States.
Right.
And it was taken off of TV.
Right, so they had to survive on the internet. So it makes perfect sense that that's where people are watching fights now. That's what everyone does. Everyone is watching on the internet. People are watching on their phones. People are watching on their tablets.
Well, that's what we ended up trying to do. I had to try to look for something to watch on the bar at the phone. But what do you think? You think these streaming sites are here to stay, or you think this is just a fad and maybe we're going to go back to our traditional watching it on cable TV
I think
again?
they're here to stay. I really do. And I like it. I know I've heard some complaints about people in like rural areas that can't stream it. They don't have enough the internet capability and that sort of thing. And I feel for those people. But for me personally, I haven't had an issue. I've always been able to stream everything I've needed to. I haven't had any lagging issues, no freezing issues. I prefer it. I mean, I can take my Fire Stick, and if I'm traveling, I can stick it in the hotel TV. I don't have to worry about connecting to the cable and all that. So I don't see a problem with it. And they're cheap. ESPN Plus is like $4.99 a month. That's the cheapest of any streaming site that I know of. I don't see a problem with them.
Well, I'm not signing up until Cyborg fights.
Well, if it wasn't my job to have it, I would be with you. All right, so we have got a
Summer to remember.
Yes, but because of the ladies.
July, International Fight Week. It's going down.
Nunes versus Holm. That's an interesting fight. I have to be honest. I'm not super jazzed about Holly getting that shot. I think Cris should have gotten it. I think GDR could have gotten it. Holly is only, 2-4 in her last 6. Like, that's not great. And it's just sort of like, I feel like this is a repeat. Everybody's always saying, why Holly, why Holly, why Holly? Why is she constantly getting these shots? Why do you think?
Well, I think that it's unfortunate that Cris isn't getting the fight.
100%.
She did 13 years, undefeated. She had to do those 2 fights at 140 that were for nothing. She finally wins the belt. She ends up suffering a defeat. It was not a fight that went long enough to where you could really see the fight unfold.
Right.
She got caught right at the beginning. We didn't get to see what was going to happen. Before the fight, this is like a little inside. Cris wanted to make sure that there was a clause put in the contract that Amanda had to have a second fight at 145 pounds. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason why this fight is happening at 135 is Amanda can go back, and she's allowed to go back to defend her title. The problem is now that 145-pound division will wait. Mm-hmm. We saw last time she took 2 years or a year to put the weight on to go there. Now she's going to take the weight back off.
I don't think she's ever going to go back to 145.
Who knows? And that's why Cris wanted to put that automatic rematch in case there was a loss, because there was a pathway to making sure, guaranteeing that there would be a rematch. And for whatever reason, it was unable to be negotiated in. So now you have a situation like an Amanda Nunes going down to fight Holly Holm at 135. Stylistically, I think Holly Holm is going to create a lot different problems than Cris. If you watch Amanda's fight against Valentina Shevchenko, both of them, Valentina did a great job of staying on the outside. She was a little bit shorter, so at the end when they were ending with the kick or they were finishing with the punch, Amanda was a little bit out of range. I think Holly's going to have that size. So she's going to be able to stay on the outside like Valentina did, but be a little bit bigger, have a little bit more distance on her kick, a little bit more distance on her punch. Those fights with Valentina were so close that another 3 or 4 punches landing either way could have made those fights.
Right.
I also think that Nunes is not a crazy wrestler, and Holly does a good job of defending takedowns in the clinch. Mm-hmm. So I think it is a compelling fight. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if Amanda loses to Holly, then realistically the fight to make is Holly versus Cris as a rematch at 145. The idea of it not being for the belt, really, I think that most fans understand that, the fight with Cris and Amanda was so fast that, depending on how this fight goes with Holly, really depends on which fight the fans would be the most interested in.
Right. And I don't think necessarily that matching Holly and Amanda is necessarily a bad idea. I just think timing it's not the right time for Amanda to fight Holly, for Holly to fight Amanda. I think Holly needs to do a little bit more work.
I think it was Amanda that wanted it, right? The one champ she hasn't beaten yet. And so that was the call out. But I'm excited to see the fight. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's rumors of Cris coming in and fighting again this summer. And it'll be interesting to see if maybe the UFC might be able to put together a fight with Cris and the winner of either Nunes and Holm.
I would like that. I'd see that. Kids.
So Snapchat. What do you think about Snapchat?
I have Snapchat, but I literally never post. The only time I use it is for those fun filters.
Okay.
And my kid loves it, the little funny things.
So I never use Snapchat, But the friends that I do have that use Snapchat are not using it for these fun little filters. So I have a 14-year-old that has moved from Brazil to live with us, and I noticed Snapchat on the phone.
Uh-oh.
So I asked Cris. Cris said she doesn't use it. When I asked our adopted, she said that she installed it because she likes to use the filters. So I allowed her to use the filters, and then as I thought about it more, I deleted the app and I told her I don't care that you like to use the filters. I don't see any pictures going up on your Instagram with those filters.
Right, yeah.
And I deleted it. So my 14-year-old does not have a cell phone. Will never have a cell phone as long as she's in grade school.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it when you get to high school unless you've bought your own cell phone. But now I feel like I need a parenting group where I can go and like bounce. Like, do you think that's too hardcore? Do you think that's realistic?
I think
so.
it's
What's the rule in your house?
Okay, so I think it's a little hardcore. Now, I have to say my 12-year-old has a cell phone. And has had
his own cell phone.
His own cell phone, but I have to preface that by saying I do not buy it and I do not pay the bill. His dad does. So.
But what happens at night? Where's the cell phone?
Oh, it's with him. He has his cell phone at all times, and it got to. So we originally got the cell phone because he goes back and forth he goes to school and then his dad will pick him up and then I'll pick him up. So we had a lot of like communication that needed to be done and like, hey, where are you? So we got him the cell phone.
Tell your dad that I am not picking you up.
Yeah, so we don't want to have to deal with that. We
Instead
don't
of,
have to,
hey, I'm not picking him up.
Yeah, so it's more just him just being like, okay, I'm at the crosswalk or whatever, you know, and so things were happening that way, and then his dad could call him when he was at my house, and I could call him when he was at his house. So that's how it started. And it has devolved into like...
Devolved?
Devolved meaning badly, right? Is that... I think that's a word. If not, I just made it up. Webster's call me. Devolved into him watching YouTube nonstop all day long. Now, I do monitor what he watches on there. There are some things I've told, like he just told me yesterday that he started watching like kids fighting at school, and I'm like, none of that. So now he's going back to...
So you monitor it, or he came and accidentally told you what he was watching?
He did, but I mean, I check every few days, and I kind of see like what he's, because it's linked to my account, so I can see like what he's watching, what he's doing.
Like once a month, maybe you're looking.
Probably more, because I trust him. Yeah. But I wouldn't. He does not have Snapchat. He doesn't have...
So you think I did good making her delete the Snapchat?
Yes, because Snapchat, the thing is, like, even if she really was just sending, or just...
I said it was a gateway drug.
Well, it totally is, because the thing is, people can send it to her.
It's a gateway drug.
And as a woman, that's why I do not use Snapchat, because I don't want lots of...
gateway drug.
Things being sent, yeah. So, I mean, I get, like he doesn't have Instagram. He has an Instagram, but I monitor it, and it's on my phone. So he can't upload anything. He can't communicate with people.
Same with hers.
Yeah, so it's like there is a... He does have... I want to be able to give him the opportunity to let me trust, like to prove his trust, to prove my trust. You know what I mean? To prove
trust.
To
test him.
Thank you. But with limits.
Nice. Well, guys, that is it for our first episode. If you liked it, go ahead and click the like and the subscribe button down below. Go ahead and share it on WhatsApp with your friends, and we'll be back with the next episode soon.
Bye.